third meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to order. Ms. Janez, could you do the roll call?
Sure. Hold on. I have it right here in front of me. Trying to be all technological savvy. Okay. Commissioner Ameri.
She's mute.
I see you. Commissioner Billups.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell's not here. Commissioner Todoro, Vice Chair. Commissioner Walton.
Yeah.
Chair Jackson.
Present.
Commissioner Evans not here. Commissioner Altman.
Present.
Commissioner Birch is not here. Commissioner Carter
Here.
and Commissioner Shipp.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
There's
Is there a second?
second.
Commissioner Altman, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. So now we've come to the time for public forum, where any members of the public may call in and converse with the commission. We have a 3-minute time limit. I believe, Denise, do we have any callers?
Yes, we have a caller. Thank you. Good afternoon, caller. Could you please unmute? Okay, she should be able to talk. I'm asking her to unmute again, or he. Hello? Well, they're not unmuting at the present time.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on, and then maybe if they unmute, we can get them back. You all received the minutes from January. Before we vote to approve them, is there any discussion or any corrections to the minutes? Then is there a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes of the January meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And so the minutes from January are approved. We have some old business, including training requirements. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. As part of us being transparent and in part of really trying to firm up some process issues with the city, we're gonna come up with some list of training that should be required of all commissioners, and maybe additional or different training that should be required for those commissioners who are involved in complaint review, just to make sure everybody is competent and has all the tools that they need. You guys have lots of tools already. And so I just wanted to kind of point out, please make sure that the training you've done in 2020 or in 2021, you sent to Denise so she can keep track of that. And then we'll develop as a commission, you know, sort of a comprehensive list of what we think people need to know. Probably chief among them is NACOL's 13 principles of effective oversight. And that's kind of a guiding set of principles for all oversight agencies across the country. I'm going to just kind of go through a couple of those for the public. I know you all know them already. But they include number one, independence, and then number two, having clearly defined authority, having unfettered access to records, access to law enforcement executives and staff, full cooperation from law enforcement, sustained stakeholder support, adequate funding and operational resources, public reporting and transparency, policy and patterns analysis, community outreach, community involvement, confidentiality for people lodging complaints, anonymity, and then procedural justice and legitimacy. And, they suggest that procedural justice and legitimacy should serve as core principles guiding the work and processes of all civilian oversight. And so that concept talks about the ways in which authority is exercised. And so we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with those principles. I'm sure you all are already. And then there's an extensive guidebook, and all of this stuff is publicly available. And we can certainly attach it to our website as well, but there's a 63-page guidebook that talks about lots of things that oversight agencies should be involved in. We talked about some of those principles and some of those things that we thought all commissioners should be aware of. And so we'll be kind of going through that and making sure that you guys are paying attention to specific chapters if you don't have the bandwidth to read the entire document, which is pretty big. And some of it I think we've done in pieces already. But one of the ones we often don't think about is acknowledging victims of misconduct. And so we have to make sure that we are centering those people and thinking about them in the work that we do. So I just wanted to kind of, A, talk about those two documents, and then B, just remind everybody that as a group, we need to kind of figure out what we think is essential for all oversight professionals. I know you've all done training already of different kinds, and some of you come into this role with great experience already. And then we'll think about what it is that what specifically we need to put on the list for things that everybody who is reviewing complaints needs to be aware of. Any questions about that?
I do.
Go. I'm sorry. Was Anand first and then Francis?
It
Is
doesn't
that okay? Okay.
None.
You have mentioned that training is required from commission, and I've been doing it, but I never thought of keeping records. You need records, I've been there over a year, and I never really thought of I should keep record of articles I read or, run by some webinar or something. I never really thought of documenting that. And I know, like, I did two just recently in December, and you sent some reading and I went over some of the reading, but I never thought of writing them down, the title, when did I do them, because I did not know that you should submit that this is what the commission have done. Some of it maybe, I'm not really sure, because I remember when I went to the website of Nicole, there was like, it will mention other things you have done in the past, I think.
Mhm.
So that is retrievable, but I can retrieve what I did, but it's going to take some work. So tell us what exactly you want, not you personally, what information we need to collect from the commissioner, so we can, like, as soon as we do a webinar, send the title of it and maybe the date we did it and the agency that it's not all came, by the way, from the Nicole, some came from someplace else, who did the training, what date, and what the title. Maybe that would be enough, and we do it immediately to Denise, and then she can keep record, or we can keep record every 3 months, submit it once, if that's what is needed. But like, for the life of me, I don't recall, I recall the content, but I wouldn't recall the title, the date, and was it Nicole, was it somebody else, because there are other agencies where, we refer to look into there. So I'm glad you brought it up, you know, and for this year, I will be sure to keep track of what I do. But in the past, I mean, I have not really bothered, you know. If I found something interesting, I'll just go ahead and watch it, and because it's interests me, the work of the commission is interesting for me, and I think it's important. So if I see something, you know, an article or something, you know, I would just do it. And with the crew also, because I'm part of crew now, we've been reading a lot, and it overlaps the reading we're doing there. And so, yeah, I just want to raise that point with you, with everybody.
That's why I was bringing it up. So I apologize sort of for not being that clear about it. I know I think we kind of touched on it maybe in January, but that's exactly why I'm bringing it up, so that you guys can just start keeping track. It's probably easier just to send things to Denise as you do them. And that way, if there's some point where it's in between the 3 months and we wanted to retrieve it, we could do that. And I apologize for you having to kind of go back and try to figure out what you did in December or what things you did. If you can do it and send those to Denise, that would be helpful.
I will try.
And so that's kind of why I'm bringing it up, so everybody can just start keeping track of what they did. Continuing education stuff is necessary, and just thinking about, some people are working towards becoming a certified, professional of oversight. And so that requires so many hours of things and so much reading. And we do have a reading list. I can send that out again. I've downloaded all the journal articles. I think Denise has them all. There are lots of books, and I'll send the book list again, and they're now all in my house. I've been driving them around to people, but if you want one of the books, I can certainly get it to you. And so we just need to keep track of that on an ongoing basis. And we also need to figure out some sort of what we think is appropriate for continuing education hours per year, because NACOL is kind of broad on that, I think. And there's a lot of ways to do continuing education. So you talked about seminars, not just from NACOL. Obviously, I went to one, Georgetown Center for Innovative Policing. That was really, really informative. So there's lots of different places where we might obtain training. And I think just giving the webinar, the title and the date, and maybe who offered it would be useful to Denise. And then remember, if you're attending webinars that cost money, like I think I just asked Denise to register me for one that costs $15 or something like that. You can certainly just ask Denise to do it, and she can.
I didn't in the beginning, I wasn't even aware that, I didn't. But I want to ask you just a follow-up question. Would there be something like all of us should do at the same time? Because this is left to our discretion, and what we're interested in would be, are we going to look at things that we all will do and discuss together, or something like that?
I think so. The annual conference is coming up in August virtually. They're doing 2 annual conferences. One is virtual, one's in person. But the virtual one is something where we can do it together. And I think this summer, a couple of us, Sarah and I, were in the same ones. I think maybe Bonnie and I were in one together. And so maybe it depends on your interest. I was trying to go to every single one this summer, so I was in one with somebody most of the time. But I think, and so what we'll do is, they haven't put out their roster of what they're going to offer yet. But some of them were very, very good for us. I mean, Francis did so many that were useful. So I think we'll kind of take a look at the list, and everybody can see the list, and maybe we can decide together which things we think are critical or which things we think are really interesting, and then try to go to those as a group. When we're in training, receiving training from NACOL, for example, that is something where it's okay if there are more than 5 of us there. Those are kind of unidirectional. We're not chatting with each other, we're not deliberating or anything like that. So there's not a cap on us doing that kind of training together. And so I think your idea is a good one. And then we could discuss after we do it together. Francis, you had a question too.
Is there, I know a lot of the times I'll find stuff online, whether it be journal articles or articles that talk about other departments around the country and what types of training they're doing or things like that. Is that something I don't know how other commissioners feel, but if we could even just email that stuff to each other, and you don't necessarily have to read it if it doesn't interest you, but just as a way for us to share with each other what we're looking at or what we're reading. I don't know what Anand's reading. She might have had some good articles that I would have been interested in too. So if there's a way that we can really share that with each other, I think that would be really helpful.
That's a good idea, actually.
Could we collect them maybe in a Google Doc or something instead of emails? Because then you've got one spot to go back and look rather than trying to find things.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
Hoffman, you got a question?
Yeah, just to follow up on Francis' point. I think if we start getting into each other, like sending it to each other, I think probably the best is sending to Denise, and she is the source. So we don't have to worry about all of us. Just send it to Denise, and Denise can distribute that or forward that to all of us.
That's a great idea. And then also she would have it like as a, sort of a resource for the future.
Correct. Correct.
And so when none of us are here, the people who follow us will have like 900 pages, 900 articles to read, which would be great. Francis, do you want to stay in that? Wait, oh, I'm so sorry. Councilmember Rumlawi, you had your hand up.
Yeah, appreciate the discussion on this. I think there's, bilateral training that needs to occur. There needs to be a required, consistent training that commissioners do that's very prescriptive. And then there's the elective reading that can be done to supplement the knowledge and interest that the commissioners have. But I think it's very important that there is a basic guide, a basic training for the commissioners to have, whatever those 2 or 3. I don't think it should be onerous. When we ask people to volunteer their time to be on this commission, we expect them to maybe put in 10 hours a month. And I know that many of you put in more than that, but we don't expect, volunteer folks to be putting in 30 and 40 hours a month into the work of the commission. I mean, there may be times where there's high profile or something new happened or that will require some extra overtime. But again, back to training, I think there needs to be just a fundamental basic training that's required and perhaps a refresher. But the literature and the scholarship regarding, community policing and the policing of the future is going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to change and shape and shift. And so I don't know how much of that could be really used in ways that some other training perhaps can be timeless. So that's just something I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think, so NACOL actually maintains a list of things that they think oversight professionals should read, and they're kind of divided up in sections, and so you don't have to read every single thing in there, but you do need kind of a wide variety of things, and that includes even things like constitutional law, right? And thinking about case law and, do you understand the Garrity decision or Tennessee versus Garner? And so kind of some basic things like that. What I was hoping you were going to say when you said bilateral was that maybe there would be staffers who would be interested in learning about oversight, and that thus when we interact with them, they would have a really good idea of what oversight is supposed to do. That's what I was hoping you were going for there.
It's not exclusive. It's not exclusive. I mean, we could get that scripted, in a way that is consistent and understandable. That's a great idea. We need to be speaking the same language.
The 2-pager on 13 principles of effective oversight is good in that I think there are some things sometimes that people ask us to do or things that they ask us not to do, and they're in direct conflict with the way oversight professionals should work. And I think there has been an assumption that we are somehow an offshoot of the police, and thus whatever police training has that should guide what we do. And there's actually a whole, not just a sort of a philosophy, but there's actual literature around what oversight does, and it's very different. And so I know that there hasn't been any training for staff on what does oversight do, what does independence mean, what does specified authority mean, and those kinds of things. And so that might be helpful for us, just so that in our interactions with the city, it would make it a little bit easier in terms of the things we're trying to do. But we'll get there at some point. And Attorney Slay, you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Just making everyone aware of a service that we've been working on with setting up a SharePoint or kind of a portal that will be available to you using your city email accounts once everybody is up and running with those. And that may be a place for Denise to store all of your training materials. So before we reinvent the wheel, I just want to let you know the city IT department is working on that, and hopefully that'll be available. And so Denise can fill it with anything and everything that's relevant for you.
Especially since we should be sort of virtual and electronic now. She literally had files in her office with the journal articles and the books, but now that we should think about being virtual all the time, that's a really good idea. Councilmember Song, you had your hand up too.
Oh, I was just going to say that if there are trainings that commissioners are attending to, if you can, I know that last month when we met, we talked about how you had shared some of the webinar series information, and that I had attended one of them, and then another one that the School of Public Health had hosted. So let us know too, electeds can go to these things. I know the one thing that's been really helpful for me as I onboarded was the webinar series from the Michigan Municipal League. I bet folks have already seen this. It's the one with Sheriff Clayton and Derek Jackson, Reimagining Community Engagement, the Future of Public Safety. It's really good. So MML still has that up. I've watched it twice, and I've shared it. I'm pretty sure I shared it with city council members. I have a council email. I'll send it to Denise, and maybe we can start. Maybe that's just one of the things that PowerPoint and that video can be added to that collection then.
If Denise can share it with us, that would be nice.
Yes.
Perfect. So any other thoughts about training before we move on? So now everybody has an idea of sort of just keeping track, hopefully not in a really labor-intensive way, of the training that they're doing, and just send it to Denise whenever you can. And then, we'll have a document, a living document of everybody who's done what, where. Usually when I do one, I just email her the confirmation, say, I just did this today. Please log in. And that way she may have a document from it, or at least she can log it in, in our document, our spreadsheet thing. All right, Francis, then take it away with the new and improved complaint review process.
Yes, so we are almost done. We've been working with Attorney Slay and the deputy chiefs, meeting regularly on getting together a process that's going to be more timely in the sense that we will have set deadlines and timelines. So we'll be able to see how this process goes and know when we're not getting something that we're supposed to be getting and when we're supposed to be getting it. We just have a few more things to confirm, and then I'm going to be sending the policy out to all of you so you'll have it. And what we've started, the one thing you're going to start to see is the 10th of every month, we will receive the log of complaints that is kept by professional standards. We did not receive a log for February because so far we do not have any complaints for 2021. So, but according to the process, they will forward us their log on the 10th of every month, and then that log will be forwarded out to the commission. So you'll be seeing that before you hear from me again. And then we have finalized 2020's log, and Lisa and I will be sitting down and assigning the information managers to those cases. Right now we have 5 emergency information managers, and we have to divvy ourselves up to be 3 per complaint review, and that is per the ordinance. So we'll be looking at those, starting those soon. They've already done one that has moved itself through the process, and they'll be working on their response, or we have to figure out what, I don't want to call it our final report, because it's really not a report. I think it's more of a recommendation, but I'll let you know what that we come out with when this is finalized. It'll be great to have the 3, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Carter, and Commissioner Billups are the 3 assigned to the one that they're reviewing now. And when they're finished, I think we're going to have a final one that's completed, and we'll finalize our terminology on that one moving forward. So the good news is that one thing's for sure, we're going to start seeing that log every month again. We haven't seen that since before COVID on a regular basis. So we will start seeing that. And the portal that Attorney Slay mentioned is going to be used by the information managers to share information and review documents. Denise is going to be playing a big role in managing all of this. She's going to be the one that informs the information managers when stuff is ready to be reviewed. She'll also keep both PD and the commissioners knowledgeable of how much time we have left. Hey, this report's due in 10 days, things like that, so we can keep the process moving. And she's been sitting in on our meetings also as we finalize whose assignments or whose responsibilities or what. So we're almost there. In addition to this one, we'll be doing another process that'll be determining how we review complaints that come through the commission's webpage regarding policy. So we do have some complaints that come in that aren't necessarily complaints about police officer behavior. They might be complaints about, hey, why do the police do this? Or, you know, we had this discussion with police and they're not able to do this, why? And these are things that we might want to look at the actual policies that we have and see how they can be improved upon, or if they're, you know, things that we can improve with training or stuff like that. So those are different types of complaint reviews that we can do at our commission level. So we're going to be putting together a policy about how we can handle those types of complaints also.
And I think one of the great things about the way this has worked out is that things like body cam footage and reports that are unredacted will now be available for the commissioners to view asynchronously, which means if I can't get it until 2 a.m., then I can look at it, where Bonnie is looking at it at 9 a.m. and Francis is looking at it at noon. And so if we are the 3 information managers on a case, we can all see the body cam footage at different times. And so it's going to allow a little bit more flexibility. It also means that going forward, we will not have to all troop down to police headquarters at the same time and stay in one room and do that, which is not possible during COVID, but then that technology has allowed us to do it going forward, even after COVID, whenever that may be, that we'll be able to do that remotely, but also asynchronously. And that's really important when you have a volunteer board, that you're able, a volunteer commission, that you're able to do that. And many times a day, lots of people work from 9 to 5 or 8 to 8 or whatever. And they're not able to go in the middle of the day to the police station. So that's going to solve a number of problems, in addition to Francis sort of hammering out the process. That I think is a useful part of that. Commissioner Carter.
Yeah, I just for my own clarification, the log that we'll be getting monthly, is that all complaints, including those that don't come to us, that come through the police department, or is it just a log? I mean, Is that all complaints?
So those, what it'll be is all complaints against sworn officers. So when a complaint, whether the complaint goes to the police front desk or to Denise, it immediately goes to professional standards for investigation and gets a number. So when you do receive that log, it will have complaint, like if complaint 001 was received at the police front desk and complaint 002 was received by Denise, they'll both be on there.
Okay. Thank you.
We're trying to figure out if we need to distinguish it ourselves, because complaints that come to us, we have more information sometimes. So that's what we're trying to work out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot more flexibility we have when complaints come through us. We know who people are. We can ask clarifying questions of them. We can make sure that the complaint, as we read it on the report, is the same as what the complaint gives it. Furthermore, when people file their complaints on our website, they get to type their complaint in themselves. And so it gets preserved in exactly the way they intended, as opposed to calling somebody on the phone at the police station who is hurriedly trying to summarize what they're saying. And we don't know what nuance is lost in that, and we may never know what nuance is lost in that. So I want to remind people that when complaints come through the police department, we will not know who those complainants are unless and until those complainants decide to identify themselves to us long after the process is over. When complaints come through us, we know who those people are. We can send them our recommendations, and we can ask questions, and we can make sure that we're understanding their complaint it really thoroughly, that we are doing that. Any other questions about the complaint review process? And Francis and I are going to try to sit down. On Friday is our appointment, and we're going to assign information managers to every case. And so we're working on 2020 cases, because there's a bunch of 2020 cases we weren't able to resolve just because of the irregularities of the system in 2020. And so the fact that will give us a little bit of time to catch up before we know the complaints that will come in 2021 are coming. And so you guys will see that. And then as information gets loaded into the SharePoint site and everybody gets their H2Gov email addresses up and running, then people will be able to access that. And then teams of people can decide when they want to meet and discuss. And we'll try to figure out a process. And as we think about report writing, because there are some good examples of how to write these kinds of reports, even if we don't call them reports, the kinds of information that we should have in each one. And there's some templates that we can use. And of course, we can amend those to make sure they make sense for Ann Arbor. But we'll make sure everybody has access to all of that information. And so as teams work on different cases, the information that's produced can be consistent, but also can reflect the individuality of each case, because cases are different and you may need to add different information from another case. Commissioner Hoffman.
Yeah, I think probably just revisit the training. If writing report is part of our training, it should be included.
So when I think when I'm trying to think of the date that I emailed you guys this week, but when I sent you the guidebook, one of the chapters that I highlighted was report writing. So I think it was chapter 15. And it talks about writing reports, and it kind of talks about them broadly, but then I do have some examples of how other police oversight commissions have written reports. And they differ based on what the event was. If it was a public event, you know, some public thing that happened, and they're responding to that vis-a-vis something that came in that was brought to them. So there's a number of different ways to write them, but report writing should definitely be part of everybody's training and a way to get familiar with it, to look at that chapter. So everybody has access to that, council members included, and so everybody can just take a look at that. Anything else on that topic? I wanted to share my screen with you guys for 1 second, because this is not necessarily, this could be continuing education.
Dr. Jackson, Councilmember Ramawi.
Yes, I was ready to say Councilmember Ramawi has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'll try to be short. On this reporting out of the complaints, I request if possible that us council people are on that email that gets reported out automatically, and so that we don't have to search for it when it gets pushed out, that we get it. We do get a lot of things, and it's nice to get that and be a part of that process. I also wanted to know whether this is going to be the type of organizational tool that we sometimes get from the attorney's office that will list all the cases against the city in confidentiality, of course, but they can go back many years. And we know we see the same update progress report, whether this has been sustained, whether this has been found to be the case or not. We would like to have that as part of that log, so we have an ongoing record and consistency. And we know it's not just snapshots of what's happening, but we know the whole history of these things, because they're not resolved within 1 month or 2 months. Many of them will go on for maybe a year, 2 or 3 years. So having that in there, so we get an update of progress. Well, maybe nothing's happened. That's fine, but at least that's something being told to us that nothing's happened yet, but it hasn't been forgotten about. I would really like to see this modeled after that same type of reporting we get from the attorney's office, because there's going to be chunks of time that go in between movement on cases, and we're going to forget, and they're going to get lost in the crack, perhaps. I fear, at least.
We have our chart is a living chart of cases, so we can't really lose them. So we could let you know, hey, we resolved this one, but we're still working on that one. But there really isn't any way for us to lose them. They don't like fall off when we resolve them. Mm-hmm. They just keep growing.
Okay.
So it's a document that's always updated.
Will these proposed, and I appreciate the work that you're all spending on this, countless hours. Again, you're all volunteers, putting in countless hours on getting this structure put together. Whether this is going to be codified in the bylaws of the commission, and whether we're going to change the ordinance, whether it's going to require anything on council's behalf to take action to make sure that we put these this document or these timelines into a form where they need to be abided by. It's not just a handshake deal. Mm-hmm. It's actually in some documents, and they can be referred to.
Yeah, right now it's being done with the existing ordinance, but we know there are questions. And so as this continues, we may actually end up having a situation where we come to council and say, we need the ordinance revised so that we can do this way. Right now it's, if we don't get the report from the police department in 30 days, we can, go to the city administrator. But it doesn't make any comments as far as what happens after that. Like, is the city administrator now in charge of getting us the report? Or I see Ari's hand went up quick, so she may be able to answer what I just brought up. But I think that as this process, right now, this is being written per the current ordinance and working together with staff to make it happen. That doesn't mean that something may not come up in the future that we're looking at making improvements to, and that would require changes to the bylaws or the ordinance.
And I can give you an example of that before Attorney Slay talks. One of the things we're very, very concerned about is looking at patterns and practice. So we have 3 information managers on different cases. It may be very challenging because they will not know the details of other cases necessarily for any one person to be able to determine patterns of behavior. And so it may be that we need to be able to designate 4 people as information managers or 5 people as information managers. It doesn't mean that there will always be 5 on every case, but it could be that there are 2 information managers whose job is to pay attention to patterns of all of the cases, for example. And that's a big enough job in and of itself to sort of analyze all of that. But that would mean that they'd have to be termed information managers, so they'd have access to every case and be able to look at all of the cases and all of the outcomes. And so right now, it would be really challenging to do that with 3 people. So,
So
you'd have one of those people on every single team in order to do that.
you touched on this information manager, since in the ordinance, 3 information managers. Yours, and I, sorry to ask this, but is this a round robin 3 information managers? So everybody's gonna have, or static 3?
No, it's not either, actually. So there are 5 people who at this point are reviewing cases, and so 3 out of those 5 people will be assigned to a case. So it could be Francis, Bonnie, and Commissioner Offman on one. It could be me, Bonnie, and Commissioner Carter on a different one. And so it isn't a round robin. It's a very organized sort of way of assigning them. And that way Denise knows, the police always know, the city attorney's office always knows, and everybody always knows who's assigned to which case. So there's no confusion, there's no, accidentally getting into the wrong documents or anything like that, and everything is kind of walled off in an organized way.
Thank you.
Sure. Attorney Slay.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been kind of keeping a list, and I know Dr. Jackson and Francis have been keeping a list as well. I'm kind of hoping that if once we go through the process a few times and iron out the bugs, we can look at potential ordinance changes. I know it may not seem like it to everyone on the call, but changing a law is no easy task, and it requires a lot of staff time, and we want to make sure that we are being transparent, we're being above board, we are respecting our Constitution and all kinds of other great things like Crime Victims' Rights Act. There's a lot of considerations that go into that. So we're kind of keeping a running document. So if anyone sees something that they don't feel comfortable with, or they like to bring it up, that's a good thing to add to the agenda next time. And I'm happy to walk through, I think, any amendments. I think when we initially passed this as a city, we knew this was going to be kind of a living document for the first couple of years because we couldn't anticipate all of the issues that we were going to have. So appreciate all of your patience going forward, and we will get the best possible ordinance for our community in the end. It's just, we want to make sure that we're not amending it, every few council meetings, and we do one big amendment that encompasses everything that we need.
Thank you for that. I was thinking about that, how, you've talked to us a number of times about how we probably shouldn't think about doing that annually. And so we've been really trying to keep a list of things we might need in the future and things that might be important for us going forward, so that, we could do something all at once, and, it might not have to be a big revision or anything like that. But so the goal was just to do it kind of one time once we've gotten it up and running and have lived with it for a bit to see what we're missing, because I think we have some really good ideas of things that kind of are a hindrance right now. Anything else? I'm not missing any. When I switch my screen, I can't see you guys' hands. Okay. So we're going to go to new business, but I wanted to bring this up because we were talking about training opportunities. Can you guys see justice in the legal system?
Yes.
Okay, so this is put on by the Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice, and it's actually this Thursday, I believe, at 7 p.m. The invitation is on Facebook. However, I do have a link, and I'll send it to everyone because you can join even if you're not on Facebook. It's a Zoom virtual event. And they're talking about the crew report, which is the council, the Commission for Racial, Council for Racial Equity in Washtenaw County. You guys know what the crew report is, and I'm sorry if I'm mangling the acronym. But it has been looking at disparities in sentencing. It's been looking at disparities in charging, and part of what they're looking at is law enforcement. Are there disparities in arrests? Are there disparities in other kinds of things? And so there's an action planning event that will take place on Thursday at 7. So if anyone, I'll send the link to everyone, but anyone who's watching, it's on Facebook. You can check it out there and attend if you're interested. It's open to every single person. So one of the things that's come from the community, but also from council members, is a discussion about facial recognition software and its use in Ann Arbor. I know we had a little conversation about it here, but we've had conversations with community stakeholders in a few different contexts. We've had conversations with council members about this, and we know that council is forming a subcommittee to kind of look at these kinds of issues. And so we wanted to just have a broader discussion about this. It may be that we might want to write a resolution about the use of facial recognition software in Ann Arbor. But we need to have a conversation about it, several conversations about it. And we thought we might be able to start some of that today in earnest. And so Council Member Song has offered to kind of take us through where they are now and how they're moving forward with what they're thinking. And I am going to share the links that you sent. Take it away.
Great, thank you. So there are folks on HRC who are interested, and Councilmember Radina is helping to identify with the chair who might be volunteering for this. And I'm hoping that we can get some names confirmed from this commission, this committee, in the coming weeks. We've been getting feedback from different community groups. So Wicker, Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice, Jewish social justice groups are really picking up speed. They're looking to actually host a town hall, probably end of March. So I'm really hoping that if we can identify folks from here in the next maybe 2 weeks, if we can just set that deadline out, and that way we can start just kind of planning a subcommittee meeting between the folks here and then HRC, and we can do things like review, say, Somerville, Massachusetts has a really great site where you can review their resolution language, their supporting materials, including comments from the ACLU, and also local immigrant groups and kind of impact statements that folks have made. So if we can get the names together, schedule time together as a subcommittee, we don't need a council resolution to form this group since you've already been appointed by council. And that's been confirmed by our city administrator. It'd be really great if we could, and also work with Chief Cox and Attorney Slay to get this, to take a look at the language and what's possible, and see if there's any exceptions that need to be made. It would be where Councilmember Radina and I were thinking maybe we can get this in front of council maybe May, with enough community feedback and input. Folks are already ready to do the work, and if we just show up and do the analysis and try to see, what fits for Ann Arbor, I'm hoping that we can pull this together fairly easy. It's an interesting topic, and what I had sent to Dr. Jackson is the website for Somerville, Massachusetts, their city site, and you can kind of see the things they pull together there, including like really good ACLU work. And then also a Color Lines article that covers the arrest of Robert Williams in Detroit using facial recognition technology last year. And then we should also note that his attorney is now part of our, it was Victoria Burton Harris. So it's a small city. It's a small world, and I feel like we can connect the dots pretty easily. And in that article, in the Color Lines article, there's a video too, and I thought that was really, I think it's important to understand the impacts of how this technology can use poorly in misidentifying folks, especially people of color. And in the video, they actually interview Mr. Williams and his daughters who witnessed this arrest. I feel like you have to hear what that experience is like to really understand why we need to make sure that we don't use it.
You know, oh, you go ahead.
No, I'm good.
I was just going to add, so I think a lot of people understand that artificial intelligence, the algorithms that run it are absolutely mathematical. However, they weren't built with people of color in mind, and therefore they do a horrific job of identifying people of color. However, it's really important to point out to the community that they also do a terrible job of identifying women.
Yeah.
As 50% of the population, that would not seem to be an effective technology. They also do a very poor job of identifying children. And in the data sets that we've looked at, that could be anyone up to the age of 16. They don't seem to be able to reliably identify them. And so, you know, just for example, Mr. Williams' case in Detroit is the first one in the country of somebody being wrongfully arrested because of this technology. And what happened was somebody stole watches from a store. The person had surveillance footage. I think they sent it to the Detroit Police Department. They sent it to the state police. And what they did was they matched it. They used facial recognition technology to match it against an old driver's license footage, a picture of him, and then they went and arrested him. And so you can see sort of that chain of command and how that worked out, but he was arrested and handcuffed in front of his wife and children, which was traumatic for his wife, traumatic for his children, and traumatic for him. And I think we sometimes don't think about the trauma of people who go through this, and the fact that he was then later released after 30 hours is not a small thing. It is not nothing that he was held for 30 hours and then released. And you think, oh, no harm, no foul. There is harm. And that's not something that we address. And so prevention certainly should be part of the solution, because I don't think we're equipped to address that. And so it looks like Asian people are also misidentified. So there are large groups of people who are not really well identified by facial recognition technology. And I think most people acknowledge that its usefulness is not as high as it should be. We would expect an error rate of, not very high in order for it to be considered reliable. And so these are the things to think about. So it's not just a person of color issue, it's also a woman issue. There are many kinds of issues with using this in law enforcement. And so we know that as the city thinks about this, there are other institutions thinking about it too. Do they want to use that technology or employ that technology in their businesses, or would they, like to abandon it if they're using it? This discussion obviously only sort of covers.
Yeah, I mean, we're still we're operating in the theoretical. I mean, Ann Arbor is not using this right now. And, it's been really great to hear from Chief Cox and other staff folks who say, like, we would never plan on using this. Unless that changes, and that's why I'm hoping that we can work on this ban, because I don't know how long I'll be on council, and I don't know how quickly this technology can change. But I know that progressive cities have kind of just taken the lead and said, I think it was 6 municipalities in Massachusetts were like, this is wrong, it doesn't work, we have other ways to do police investigative work. And then it moved up from municipalities to a statewide ban. Other cities have done this, and the entire country of Canada bans this. So if Canada can do it, I kind of think Ann Arbor can do it. And I should say that doesn't mean that we can limit federal use, right? Like ICE, the FBI, they still use this technology. I mean, they used it when investigating the attacks on the Capitol. So what the resolution language that I've been looking at, and what we can model from other cities, is really specific to city uses. And there's been concern from the community on how public housing entities have used it in other cities too. So I mean, this discussion should be pretty narrow, but on city use, and then housing use, whatever schools does, the schools will have to figure it out with those community members.
Go ahead, Commissioner Amiri.
I'm curious, is like Ann Arbor considering using it? I know we don't use it now. Are we considering using it? And is there a plan in the future to look into it?
No, but I'm just thinking that, as technology purchases come up, and as technology changes, we should just make the statement that this is,
Okay.
we know
I'm
this.
just curious, yeah.
No, but it's kind of preemptive,
Good. I just was curious, was the reaction to Ann Arbor Police Department deciding to use it or just?
No, it's,
Preemptive is good.
I think it's more like a statement of values as the technology changes, and even when council members change, right? I don't know how many nerds really run for office and then follow security and surveillance issues when it overlaps with civil rights. So I don't know. We should take this opportunity.
And there are working in the community to sort of educate people about it. Commissioner Osman.
Yeah, it's one is by the way, Canada is more progressive country, so just want to make that a little bit clear. The other thing is the face recognition technology is just one of many that are at disposal of the law enforcement. And I think I did attend today the technologies that are being implemented. This was a seminar by Nicole. They had it today. And facial recognition is one. You have drones, you have smart lights now with cameras, you have cameras all over the place. Even people have the ring, those new cameras over there on they somehow in some places those images are being also shared by the police. So the drones so there are many of those technologies that are being used. The other thing is the concern is the privacy, security, the waste. The technology is not an alternative to community policing. We have to have, the Zoom. We are doing Zooming, but the interactions between people is really important. You don't build trust by just showing a picture of a person or a video of a person. You have to interact with that person. So I think these are some issues that in the future, if we're going to say, well, if we have this type of technology that would reduce the force by X number, or this is the budget's going to be in the future, all these things. These are not alternatives to really having people, foot soldiers, foot police, people going to places, establishing a good relationship and build the trust. So I think we have to be quite careful. Plus, these technologies, maybe they can be manipulated. Maybe they are not as effective. Maybe they are not as maybe for certain people, certain age would work. Well, you can't go and say, if it works for 20% of the people, this means that it works for everybody. So we have to be very cognizant of the pitfalls and deficiencies of these technologies.
I would also, if you don't mind, if folks don't mind, if you take a look at Minneapolis, just their city council had a unanimous vote for banning facial recognition technology. So, the Midwest can do this. So if you Google and take a look at, and it was unanimous. It was a unanimous council vote. So anyways, if folks you can look that up, and I'll send more facial recognition, articles, and as I pick them up. But really, I'm an elected. This is being motivated by the community. So if immigrant rights groups are just saying, we've seen it deployed, we know that it can hurt people, that needs to go on record. So I mean, I'd like to see this come through, but it really means nothing unless it's really coming from the community. So,
but also you had mentioned something about you know, we are over here as a commission because we want to really protect the rights of residents of this town, especially the people who had bad experience with police encounter. And what we need to do is really to make sure that any technology that we are bringing in would not make things continue the pattern of the not identifying the individuals we have to identify. So I feel that it's really important to err on side of being more conservative in a sense that even if you're going to find somebody, you don't have to sacrifice 100 cases for one. So it's just it's not a dry math, because it affects people's lives, and we have to be cognizant of that.
Well,
I know everyone's so excited. I'm excited. So please let me know if you can send names. I don't want Councilmember Radina to beat me at this, and he has HRC names before I do. So I kind of figure out, since the idea came to this group first, then we should be able to identify our volunteers first. I'm competitive, so we can do this.
email Denise ASAP. Apparently right now, stop doing what you're doing and email Denise and let her know if you're interested in participating on this, because there's like a low key, competition thing going on of which we were unaware. So, but it is an important topic, and it is one that is certainly within our purview. And so, if you're interested in participating in that, that would be really useful to the community. The last thing on our list is the discussion of the proposed in our police department budget. So we know there has not been a budget approved. People haven't made their final pitches. I think it isn't until April, right, that Tom will do his thing, and there'll be a public comment section before then.
That's
However,
May.
Yes.
May, I'm sorry.
May.
So maybe I'm thinking April 29th is when the comment part begins. I know there's a timeline. In any case, it'll be the spring. It'll be warmer than this, hopefully, when people start making public comments and when the budget is finalized. However, lots of people commented that they saw the article in MLive that talked about $1.3 million in reductions to the police department. Lots of that due to attrition, eliminating 12 positions. We know there have been a bunch of retirements, and there will be some hiring of new people to replace some of those people, but the net will be a loss of 12 positions. And that the fire department is experiencing some reductions too, eliminating perhaps 5 positions. And at the same time, one of the things that was noted was that the city's sustainability office is requesting an extra $3.6 million. I know those are not equivalent, and they may be independent of each other, but one of the things that we need to talk about is our potential response to that budget and budget cut and allocation of funds. So one of the things that I think we have said over and over and over is that we would like more help for people in mental health crises, more help for people with drug overdose crises, and we would like some alternatives to policing in those positions. Some people who are trained to do that. You guys are probably familiar with the CAHOOTS model, which works in Oregon, where you have some people who are kind of mobile, and they are medics or counselors or EMTs or paramedics and social workers and combos of people who serve the community in ways in which, many times police officers are not, it's not necessarily their job to do, but we know, as Chief Costa said a bunch of times, they're open 24 hours. So when you have a problem at 3 a.m., they have to respond to your problem. So this CAHOOTS CAHOOTS program is one that also operates 24 hours a day, but it has trained people to go around and respond to those crises. And so I think one of the things that we need to consider is if the Ann Arbor Police Department is, if there's $1.3 million that is not going to be allocated to the police department anymore, how much of that could be allocated to community services like these? And so far we haven't seen a plan to do that. We haven't seen anybody come forward and say, oh, but we'd like to allocate that in that way. And so perhaps that is our job to propose that, although it's not our budget to do that with. But perhaps we understand that the mayor kind of invited us into that arena in June last year when he said, you know, that we were free to review the city budget and the police budget. And so perhaps it is us who needs to say, hey, while you're getting rid of $1.3 million, and we understand that 820 is, it appears to be the overarching priority of the city of Ann Arbor, and we get that, and we think, somebody said that to me this week, that the city can walk and chew gum, that we can work on alternative measures to public safety at the same time that we work on zero carbon emissions, which is a very, very important goal and obviously overarching and impacts lots of other things. But perhaps we need to think about making our own recommendations about what happens in that way, because it doesn't look like anybody else is doing that yet. I can't tell whose hand was up first, Councilmember Rumlawi or Song. Do you guys know who was first? Ali?
Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Jackson, and I appreciate you bringing this up here tonight. I did raise some eyebrows during that discussion, and really more when we saw the headline, but as we all know, MLive likes the clicks. And so that article made it a connection between reductions in AAPD simply going to be shifted over to 820, which that's not necessarily the conversation that was had. You know, Tom has asked all budgets for 5%. Our police chief was kind enough to do the work and look at the staffing, and I believe that number is actually $11 million, but I could be off because there might be 1.3. You're probably right, because it's 11 officers that I'm thinking, 11 officers that may, if they retire, but you know, again, the conversation we've had nationally and somewhat locally is you know, the topic of defunding police, and I think that's been I think misused in a lot of ways. I think what we want to hear is a redirection of our resources, and any kind of cuts to the police budget. The first one in line should be you know, mental health services and social services related to the welfare and safety of the community, indirectly. And I know that some people say, well, climate change also endangers people, but not to the degree that we're seeing here in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, with policing and climate. I think we can make a bigger, stronger case for using the reductions in the police budget for mental health and community services. So there are ongoing talks. In fact, I had a 20-minute conversation last night after our budget meeting with our city administrator about this, because during the presentation work session last night, we talked about $254,000 that the Ann Arbor Housing Commission wants to put aside to help with mental health services. And there was also talks, my colleague will probably mention it more, but I'll steal a little bit of her thunder. The Cahoots, you know, program she talked about yesterday as well, and that's been brought up several times. We do have challenges here. We don't have the population density that some of these other communities have. How do you scale up? How do you pay for these services when we're only a population of 100,000 or 300,000 if you look at the county, and the county needs to be involved in this. The mayor talked about it last night when it comes to dispatch services and other things that are interrelated and intertwined with these services. So we need to look at this comprehensively. We're just beginning. So I would say no decisions have been made, obviously, but it is important, and we did bring it up last night, that this commission be included in the conversation early on and not as an afterthought. So both of us spoke up and reminded our colleagues yesterday the need of the commission to be involved with these conversations.
Thank you. I did not say this, but I would just let everyone know that I did do my due diligence and check with our city administrator, Tom Crawford, before I raised this discussion here. So I just wanted to put that out there. I did not simply read the newspaper article. When I read it, I then had a conversation with
No,
the city.
absolutely. I pose the same question to the folks in the community. I mean, if we're going to make cuts to the police budget, should it be going to climate change policies, or should it be going towards what we've been talking about for the last year and a half here, especially with increased mental health services?
Council member Saul?
Well, I hate to think that we have competing interests between climate action and trying to figure out what we need to do with our police. But in any event, I just want to follow up council members Ramlawi's comments about the housing commissioner's proposed budget last night, and the $234,000 that she would like to dedicate to pilot a mental health response program, so that when there are psychiatric emergencies in the city, not just specific to public housing, it wouldn't require a police response. And I've posted on social media saying that if it's going to be like Cahoots or the Portland Street response, then that would be great. But I also said it's not a lot of money. And Jennifer Hall, the housing commissioner, had said that they'll try to see what they can coordinate with the county. And I also asked to see if there's any way that she could explore finding more funding for this. I actually said, please find us more money, Jennifer Hall. More money for housing, and now apparently this program. But if there's interest in the community, it would be really good to have that feedback, because the schedule for the budgeting work sessions are April 19th, Tom Crawford presents recommended budget to council. May 3rd, there are public hearings on budgets and fees. And then council considers the budget on May 17th. So April's coming pretty quickly, and public hearing on May 3rd is coming pretty quickly too. So if you have thoughts on this little pilot program, it'd be great to hear. I think other council members would appreciate hearing from folks.
Certainly. Commissioner Tadora Hargraves.
Thank you. I definitely am very interested in stepping up on this then. If there's something out there to start this moving, I'm happy to be a part of that. I worked with Jennifer Hall in the past, so I'm happy to work with her now. This is something that came up during a talk I gave at the Ann Arbor Democratic Party, and I think it is important that when we talk about things like reducing police budgets, that we are thinking about the fact that we're doing that in an effort to redirect funds, to find, not necessarily depolicing as much as redefining policing. We know that there are many officers who have said that they would welcome having social workers take some of the calls that they respond to. We know that there's additional training that they would require to continue to take some of these calls. So it really is about reappropriating the money in the best way possible as times change and the needs of the public change, and the needs of what it takes to keep our community safe change. So I'm happy to step up and be a part of this one.
And I think just to tack onto that, and then Commissioner Osman and then Councilmember Ramlawi, I think one of the things we have to think about is not just retraining police to do this better. We have to think about the presence of non-police to do these jobs, because just the presence of police alone in these situations, as I talk to people who've had overdoses, as I talk to people who are homeless, the presence of police often causes great anxiety and escalates where they are just by their presence. So we understand police are being helpful and they're hanging out until maybe an EMT arrives, but their very presence alone can be triggering and anxiety provoking and escalate symptoms in people. And so although we understand police can get more training, we also understand that there are people whose overarching philosophy of the way they work. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say, I think I misstated myself. I think the goal is to get police off of the calls And that's really the goal. I think if you were to say that they were going to continue being on the calls as they are today, then they need additional training. But I think the ultimate goal would be to have them not be called, to have 911 be in a position to dispatch these calls to another group. I think that is the big goal.
Absolutely. But there is crisis intervention training, and there are other kinds of training, and we've been talking to people about that in Wayne County, here in Washtenaw County. We've been talking to people all over the place about that. And so if you have ever watched me and Francis at the same time, we talk over each other all the time. We finish each other's sentences. And so I know you knew I was also thinking about that kind of thing. So that is an alternative, but we're also, our primary goal would be to sort of de-police it, to have people who are not police in a position to do this. I know crisis intervention training could be like a faster way to get at it, but I think we might think about doing it better as opposed to speedier. Commissioner Osmond.
Yeah, the one thing is I think our next meeting probably would like to invite Kathy Wyatt from the Washington County Police Office. She is very, very knowledgeable with all the issues, especially when it comes to policies and the mental health and all these things. There is a mental health services that are available in the county, and the sheriff office, they are using that. The 911, the individuals who run that, they are trained to identify whether a phone that a call is coming to dispatch a police officer versus using the services. I don't know how much of that services that are present in the county that our police department is using. This is something that we have to look into, but she would be a great source to answer some of these questions that we have, especially now when it comes to, yes, we have only 130,000 people living in this town, 300,000 people living in the county. The Kahoot program in Oregon is serving a town of 170,000 people. So having that number is pretty much within what we are planning to. Part of our work with the Human Rights Commission and is to look at the CREW program and look at some of the issues that we can focus on. And one of them is the mental health, probation and parole and data. So these are the things that we probably would, as a subgroup, would be focusing on. But I think we're going to have a meeting this Friday. Chair, if you allow me, I could invite Kathy Wyatt to join us for a short time, just to address some of these issues that services that are available in the county that we can probably use. If you like, I could invite her to join us for our next meeting in March.
And would you ask her to email me, or I could email her because I've been in touch with her too. So I can email.
If you would like, I will leave that. I'll leave that to you. But I will tell her that you're going to contact her.
Yeah, so I'll just email her and ask her to do that. Thank you so much. Council Member Ramlawi.
Thank you. I'll just simply say, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's the case with the current state of affairs, unfortunately, with the drastic cuts to social programs and mental health the state of Michigan has undergone for 30 years or 40 years. And now the police are the catch-all for everything. And we know just by talking to them, they invite the help. They want the help. They need the help. The community wants and needs the help. We just need to address it in our policies now. And so, the talks yesterday about the Housing Commission, spawned me to believe to think that there needs to be perhaps a staff for that agency to help, so that calls are never really made to not never, but reduced. The calls to 911 are reduced by being able to take care of some of these issues and instances before it gets to that level where a call needs to be made to 911. But right now, everything is 911. In fact, last year with mask enforcing, we were told to call 911. You know, so it is, it's unfortunate, but this is what we're working with. And I'm hopefully we can adjust our policies just the same way that we've adjusted the criminal justice system here in Michigan. We're finding, you know, now the state has a bunch of money because they're finally cutting money from that bloated $9 billion a year that we were spending on the prison system here in Michigan. So, you know, we just need to do that locally now and redirect those resources, not necessarily cut the funding that goes to the police, but reinvest in different tools and personnel and policies.
I just want to make sure, are there commissioners who have thoughts on this, who have questions about this? Commissioner Amiri, you look like you were about to say something.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. So I think this is, we should have a number of conversations with people, but I think that, and Francis and I can follow up with Tom Crawford again, but perhaps, you know, we need to make our own pitch about, or we'll pitch council. But I think we are council liaisons, and maybe you can pitch the rest of council, or we can come and make our pitch. But I do think that is very striking to us. We think that we can do carbon neutrality at the same time that we are looking at changing the way we provide public safety in Ann Arbor. We think we can do both, and we think it's probably the optimum time to make such an attempt. And so it's part of the mission of this commission itself to look at those issues, even outside of having, you know, sort of a direct invitation from the mayor to do so last year. Just as a reminder, please email Denise if you are interested in working on the facial recognition subcommittee. And if you are interested in thinking about budgeting and redirecting of resources, please email me, and we'll figure out how best to attack that. I mean, it's something that Francis and I have been talking. I mean, something we talk about obviously all the time, all of us. But you know, we were very concerned, and we did reach out to Tom Crawford to kind of figure out. Okay, I understood it was not a wash of 1.3 million from police to, you know, A20. So that part was really clear, but we weren't clear on what, you know, the options were. So that's something that we need to, you know, be clear on, but we also can't sit silent and sort of say, hey, oh yeah, whatever you guys do is fine with us, because it's not. Reports from committees. I understand that the outreach committee has had a raving success. And would any of you like to discuss that?
I think you are referring to the poster of the bus.
Show it. I am indeed. Can you all see this? You should talk about the origin of this and what's happening.
Okay, this is, you know, we were talking about, and in COVID time, it was been hard to reach out the committee. If you remember the outreach committee, initially, Mohammed Uthman, Commissioner Uthman was with us, me, Uthman, and Commissioner Andrew, and we were starting to organize meeting with the community in different places to talk about the commission and our work, so the people are aware of our presence. But what happened shortly after we started this is that COVID happened. So we initially thought this is going to be a short, nobody knew that it's going to last for a whole year. So we start talking about this going a few months ago, that this is going last longer than we thought, and maybe we want to do some other things to reach out to people. So we start reaching out to organizations. And we did a small video. Lisa talked about the commission, and we're trying to go to meeting, their board meeting and what have you. In the meanwhile, we thought like, what is the best way, one good way to reach people in general? So we came out with the idea to reach out the transport authority, the train, they call it, not the train, the ride. The ride, reach them out and see how can we reach their community. And I had a couple, 3 discussion with a woman, her name is Bonin, her last name Mary Bonin. And we settled on 2 things. One of them, they wasn't really interested in having brochures we want to put initially brochures in the bus, and they weren't interested because they said people pick them up, throw them up, they trash them. So we thought we buy an ad, but interestingly enough, they were, because if you remember, we talked about buying ads, and in the bus there's thing. So we agreed, and they agreed to do this free for us, provided that we keep it private, which is, it's hard to keep private when you have a meeting of 9 people, because she said many other organizations come to us and ask us to have posters in the bus free, and we kept telling them no. So I promised her, and so far, it's hard to talk about it to the commission and not say that we're not paying for it. So they agreed, and it took a lot of work, and I have to particularly thank Denise and Andrew, because it went back and forward to put as much information we needed, because we were restricted on the number of words we have to put, and it took a lot of back and forward till we agreed to that. And Sarah and Commissioner Uthman, we all worked together. It really was a collective effort, and I think that was a big success. I'm very, very happy that all the buses in Ann Arbor now will have this in their buses, and so that was one thing. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to reach different organizations, and we had success with Avalon Housing, where they invited us to meetings. They have first of all, they invited us to bring brochures, and they were willing to distribute the brochures. They are putting our video on their website, and also they have meetings. There's a coalition of different organizations that they meet once a month, and they invited us to go there and speak about the commission. So these are we've done a lot of calls, to be honest with you, and a lot of reach out, but not always you succeed. People will call you, will not call you back, will tell you, will talk to you after the holiday. But in these 2 areas, I think we did good progress, and we will continue our effort to push for more work and with other our goal, and anybody who work with an organization, with a church, who have connection, we will be very happy to have you to help us reach out to the community. We are interested in particular in the underserved community. How do we reach out to them? Like the buses, who's in buses. Usually most people who ride the buses are people from also like Avalon Housing. These are areas that, and the reason I say this, because these are the population that have 2 things. One of them, more run with the police, and number 2, more bad experience with the police. Like if I'm stopped the other day for speeding, okay, have a nice day, thank you. And then they were very nice and very polite, but that's not the experience of everybody. So it's been challenging, to be honest with you, to work on outreach in COVID time, because here, look at us, for a year we've been meeting over the computer, and that's not something you can do if you want to reach a community. So that's basically it.
Thank you so much for doing all of that and working on it for so long. This is a major accomplishment, and you guys should be very proud of that.
I'm very happy with the way it came out, and I'm happy that the committee worked together, all of us worked together in a very good way. And Denise, I have to thank Denise, because this poster, if I tell you I have 100 emails about the poster, I might not be exaggerating.
I didn't want to share it because I wasn't sure I had the latest version, and I do not want to share the wrong one. Thank you, Denise, for sending me the last version of it. I know lots of people had a hand in it, and it was very important. And Sarah, who couldn't be here tonight because she has a conflict at the with the University of Michigan, she participated last night in Avalon's housing meeting with their residents, and I got to do it a few months ago. And she did it again last night, and so she'll report out on how that went. But she did text me afterwards to say that it went well. So we are always grateful for partners in the community who allow us to come in and have conversations with them about what we do and how you know, we can serve people in the community. So are there any other committees that need to make a report? Sorry, Councilmember Ramlawi. You had your hand up.
I know I've used up a lot of your time here tonight. I just wanted to say thanks. That poster looks beautiful. It really is for volunteers. Really, I'm not sure what you do as your day job, but that's pretty darn slick looking. And the QR code, I know, you know, sometimes folks who need the services that this commission offers may not have internet or a phone, but having that QR code on there, I think, is a great addition. Thank you.
Any other communications that we need to get out before we adjourn? This has been probably the most efficient meeting that we've had of the year. I'm sorry, it's only the second one. Topics in a short period of time. And so thank you everyone for your participation. I know everyone does so much more work outside of the meeting, and the meeting is really just reporting out about all of the hours put in doing work outside. So thank you very much for all of the work that you do. If there is a motion to adjourn, we can hear it.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good-
And
Thank you.